at this point of time, the working age population that is between 15 and 59 years, as compared to the dependent population that is less than 40 or above 60, for us, the working age population will be much greater than the dependent population, at least to 2030. So what is being talked about is that we are now getting into what is called the youth bulge, and that this will reach the peak in the year 2035. And most countries that have come out of poverty, it has been during this period. This period when this youth bulge has been there, they have actually done very well during this period. And by 2020, we are supposed to have a median age of 29. At that point of time, China will have a median age of 37. So obviously, you know, their dependency ratios will be going up. But we still believe that while, you know, demographic dividend means more hands, and if you are looking at it that way, unless we really capture this demographic dividend, so to speak, we possibly will have more of a disaster than the benefit, so to speak. So to just think about it, I think this is probably the biggest problem that is facing the country today. And that's why we thought that this is something we could talk to you about, as to what exactly, in your view, could be the policies and what could be the prerequisites that will help India to grab this particular opportunity. So if I could start with you, Chanda, because just recently you had declared that some of your lower-end jobs will actually be done through robotics. Now, probably these lower-end jobs are the ones that people who are not very highly educated, but who are educated all the same, would actually be targeting. Now, with so many people in India, is India the right country to go with robotics? And if so, what happens to all those aspiring Indians? In which area do you see them actually finding those jobs?
Yeah, so Arundhati, as you said that, you know, is demographics an opportunity or a myth? I think it's hugely an opportunity for us today, but we have to remember that we have to put all the enabling factors in place to harness that opportunity. And you know, while all those enabling factors are that we have to provide them basic health, basic education, skill them, make them employable, but also at the same time create that employment. So how do we go about creating the employment? I think the first thing is that in the past few years, it's really the services sector that has created employment in the country. I think, you know, as we are saying, laying the foundations for further growth, I would say, we have to ensure that all our sectors fire up, because it has to be the agricultural value chains, it has to be the entire manufacturing sector that has to really create those employments. So, you know, things like Make in India, Digital India, I think those make a lot of sense for creating employment for this, this set of young population. The other thing is that as we look at creating employment, I think in this country, we have to look at what are those right sectors that can give us that upsurge in employment. So even when we talk of manufacturing, can we look at some specific sectors? Like I always use the, you know, example of electronic sector. Why do we as a country import electronics worth $40 billion a year? Can we not make them in India, just for India? And if we do that, not only are we going to save the, you know, the foreign exchange outgo and so on, but it's estimated, our people have estimated that just this sector can actually create an employment of 28 million people over a 10-year period. So I think we have to specifically look for those sectors. At the same time, to your question, can technology play a role? I think technology has to continue to play the role, because technology enables many other things. It enables accuracy, it enables efficiency. So even when we talk of robotics, what we say is that, you know, as a person is doing the job, the mundane part of both, you know, checking, making and checking, the checking gets done and things are 100% accurate, then your speed of service, etc., goes up. But that does not mean that the bank does not grow. That does not mean that the bank does not actually add a few thousand people almost every year to its employment base. So I think we have to create employment, but we have to make people whose skills are relevant to the kind of employments we create, and we have to identify those sectors that can really fire up the employment base in the country.
Well, going on from that, Mr. Birla, if I can ask you the next question, and that is, you are currently employing about 1.2 lakh employees worldwide. And that being the case, what do you believe you can do more in order to create these further jobs? Do you believe that the numbers that you already have is already too many and that you should be looking at further efficiencies there? Or do you really think that, this 100 crores of employable people that we have, that we will have by 2050, that they can actually be accommodated in this country by doing certain things right, and those things should be started from now? So what would be those things?
So just to reiterate some of the points that Chanda made, I think that our demographic dividend or the demographic advantage that we have is pretty much a potential dividend for us, not just a dividend, but a huge dividend when we look at the fact that other economies around the world, especially the developed economies, are fast aging. We have a median age of about 27. I believe for China it is about 35. We have a working population of 63% of the total population of our country, which is huge. The dependency ratio, which is the number of people who are not working or who are working vis-a-vis or on the base of the total population, is getting lower year by year. All of these things mean that we're going to have more young people below the age of 25 in the next few years in the working force as compared to anywhere else in the world. And young people means energy, new ideas, it means innovation. All of that means that we will have more people earning income, we'll have more income, we will have more consumption, therefore we will have more of savings. As the country grows, as you have more people earning, the rate of savings in the countries goes up. And I think the broad themes that this brings to the fore are those of manufacturing, the first one and the foremost one. If you look at statistics, manufacturing actually is the biggest lever for employment opportunities, for creating employment opportunities, which means that for every rupee spent, if you look at the employment opportunities that become available, that's the highest for investment in the manufacturing space. For every manufacturing job that you create 4 jobs in the service sector. All of these jobs are normally high-quality jobs. All of these jobs are normally high-paying jobs. So these are the kind of jobs that we're looking at. Manufacturing needs an impetus. I believe that we have the potential to become a manufacturing hub, not just for this part of the world, but for the entire country, for the entire world. We have a track record in manufacturing. Some of the manufacturing companies in India, including ours, are world beaters in their spaces globally. Some MNCs, many MNCs have had a track record of manufacturing here in India, and very successfully so, and are looking at increasing their investments in manufacturing facilities here in India. So I believe manufacturing is a huge lever for creating potential jobs. With manufacturing comes the whole issue of ease of doing business. That is something that this government is focusing hugely on. I think this whole idea of ranking states on the basis of ease of doing business in each state is a great idea. I can see that it's creating a very healthy spirit of competition amongst the states, given the fact that we have a presence in almost every state of the country. I believe that states are actually now going out and competing for that extra rupee of investment, whether from domestic investors or from investors globally. The other interesting factoid is that we have 57% of our population working in rural India, which contributes only 17% to our GDP, which means that there is huge disguised unemployment in rural India. And the fact is that we will see huge urbanization happening in the coming decade. And the challenge, therefore, will be around infrastructure, will be around quality of housing, quality of healthcare. So I think these are the big themes: urbanization, education, formal education, but also vocational training, which this government is focusing on, as well as quality of infrastructure. I think that these are the big levers that we need to pull as a country, and we've got to actually fire on all cylinders to achieve the kind of increase in the number of jobs that we're looking at to actually reap the demographic dividend.
You know, I find that comment of yours regarding states very interesting. And I remember, you know, before the election, this last election that we had, that's about 3 years back, I had attended a talk by Mr. Ramchandra Guha, who's a noted historian, as you know. And he was asked, you know, who will form the better government, the UPA or the NDA? And he gave an answer which has stuck in my mind. He said that actually speaking, India will come into its own only when we have 7 or 8 very good chief ministers and not only a prime minister. So he actually attributed the growth of India to having better ruled states than to only have a very well-ruled center. So I think what you were saying about this competitiveness between states, really, it is something that we should look forward to, and we are beginning to see it. You're quite right there. We are beginning to see a lot of competition among states. Mr. Mahindra, if I can just ask you the next question. You know, India has lots of low-skilled workers, and their share in the workforce has remained more or less constant, around 30% of the workforce. What's been getting squeezed are the medium-skilled occupations, actually, who are engaged in things like operating machineries, driving vehicles, doing clerical work, and things like that. In fact, for instance, when you come to clerical work, I think this is a breed that is going out of fashion totally. If you look at the private sector banks, they don't have any clerical staff at all. So what could be the possible reasons for this? And is it possible for the low skill to directly leapfrog to the high skill? Do you have to go through the transition of having a lot of medium skilled workers? Is it necessary to promote these for the Make in India piece? And if so, how can we go about doing it?
I'm not sure I'm going to have the panacea for all those knotty problems, Arundhati, but I want to echo something that Kumar had said about the importance of manufacturing. I remember when Bill Gates came to India in '97, and I was at some CII function where naturally he was being projected as a demigod, and all the preambles to his address talked about how India was going to leapfrog the manufacturing era and go straight into the services era. And he added a very sobering note. And particularly because in that year, I think only 2 million people were being employed by IT. And he said, you know, you cannot leapfrog the manufacturing sector. And he pointed to China and he said, the kind of population you have, you're going to have to focus on manufacturing. That's the only area that will get you those jobs. Which of course poured cold water on that audience right away. But his words have, I think, turned out to be true, and hence the Make in India push. Coming to your question about skills, can the low end leapfrog? I'm not sure it can be done, to be very honest. I think we do have to focus on finding some way to unsqueeze that middle segment, and that is going to be manufacturing. Now, at this point in time, the skeptics out there are saying that when China got into its manufacturing boom from the late 80s, the world was growing at a rapid pace. The world was ready to receive Chinese goods. The situation today is different. The world is actually closing in. The world is becoming more protectionist. So we don't face the same propitious circumstances that the Chinese did when they had their boom. That's one major problem. And the second question that I'm always faced when I travel is that you're talking about Make in India, but making itself is undergoing a revolution. With 3D printing and other technologies, proximate manufacturing is coming back into vogue. How do you therefore bring this boom in? There are two answers to this, very briefly. One, I think what the government is doing is spot on in terms of the Make in India efforts to improve the ease of business. And we're meeting, as you said, or somebody had pointed out, I think Mr. Mundra had pointed out, that we have fortunately climbed the ranks in the listing of countries in terms of ease of doing business. And from what I had last heard about from Niti Aayog, they have some kind of plot afoot to create some giant special economic zones, coastal economic zones. Dr. Pangaria is very focused on coastal economic zones, particularly because he believes that, look, infrastructure is going to take a while. So if we do want special economic zones that are going to export, they should be on either side so that there is no bottlenecks they face in getting their goods out. And these are going to be giant zones. Will they succeed? I believe so. And it's ironic coming from an Indian businessman who should be looking at opportunities to be there. But to be very frank, as a policymaker, I would simply go to all the Chinese, all the overseas companies, including China and the Chinese companies themselves that are in Shenzhen and Guangdong and are worrying about the lowering of competitiveness of Chinese labor and say, come out here. Because very frankly, they already have the clients. It's like Foxconn coming to India. Foxconn comes with Apple. So I'm sure that there will be Indian companies that will fight for their bit of the pie. But I think given the demographic disaster that awaits us, as opposed to the dividend, if we don't act quickly, I believe what the government and Niti Aayog is plotting to do is absolutely right. Addressing the other question about proximate manufacturing, I think we need to think a little bifocally. Even as we try and go after a fair share of scale manufacturing by getting some companies stealing share from China, moving them to these new zones, I think we have to think of the concept of smart villages, not just smart cities. Why shouldn't India be a part of this new technology boom? Why shouldn't we lead the 3D printing technology boom? Costs are coming down. One of the exercises we are doing as a pilot, really as CSR right now, but it could become different, is to simply find a village and put a 3D printer and scanner out there. Somewhat akin to that hole-in-the-wall experiment that somebody did with a computer in a wall in a slum. But what we want to do is put it out there without any preconceived notions of what will happen, see what the artisans do with it. If you think of the craftsmanship that is available in rural India and their design skills, and you give them the means to produce in a high technology manner, they don't even need today, they don't even need a marketing organization. You can go straight onto the net and serve your goods to the globe. From an automotive company, think about having your parts, certain parts, automotive parts printed in the village. Think of what it does to inventory, rather than having warehousing needs. But you have local people able to replicate certain fast-moving parts through 3D printing. So you take the employment to the village. So I'll stop there because I do think there is a way to avoid the demographic disaster. But it involves not only scale manufacturing, it involves proximate manufacturing and taking manufacturing to the villages.
Well, that is really, I must say, a very new idea, to have actually 3D printers sitting in disparate locations, printing out auto parts depending upon requirements. It's really, I would say, means totally out of the box thinking, and probably it's something that may actually come to pass. As you say, you're trying it out with CSR, so best of luck for that. I hope something of that sort does happen. Mr. Biyani, let me come to you now. And this I will ask you because, you know, you have retail chains. And the reason I'm asking is this: the labor force participation rate for working age women in India is still only 28.6, whereas in China it is actually as high as 70.4. And it means we are really much lower than global peers. Even Bangladesh has twice our number. So, but though you are looking at a workforce where, at least when I visit your shops, I find a lot of women. Why do you think this is happening? Why is it that women are not able to be more a part of the working force? And do you think that we are really losing out as a country by not trying and getting more inclusion, at least gender diversity in the workplaces?
Numbers in India sometimes are misleading. And I think with every trend, there is a contra trend. And we believe the trend which we are seeing of decline in labor on the women workforce is the decline in the farm labor, because farm labor has been a significant portion for women labor. But if you look at the society and the cultural shifts which are happening, I think the girls are coming into the mainstream. If you look at the amount of chartered accountants, designers in the services sector, there is a remarkable shift happening. A girl child is accepted more, even in a state like Haryana and Rajasthan, which I have been visiting lately. And there is good amount of the girls' education going at a high level. If you look at Bangladesh, the example which you gave, madam, I think there is one single industry which has got that thing, that's garment industry. Garment industry over there employs close to 4.2 million people, out of which 90% is women. I think one industry can change the skew ratio. As a company ourselves, we employ more than 45,000 people, and I think soon we are touching 30% plus of women workforce. I believe our intention is it should touch around 50%. So I believe there is a change happening. It will take a little while. As a society, we are changing. Culturally, we are changing. And I think we'll have to make efforts at the corporate level. And there are certain businesses which will be prone, where woman worker can be a very, very efficient worker, especially the textile manufacturing industry. And like Mr. Birla was mentioning and Mr. Mahindra about manufacturing in India, I believe if Indian consumption happens, especially on two sectors, one is clothing and one is on food sector, I think it will be Indian companies which will, if you look at Bangladesh, 92% of the companies which are into manufacturing are owned by Bangladeshis. Probably only 5% are foreign owned. If we have a statistics which says that if every Indian consumes 2,000 rupees more every year, our GDP will grow by 2%. So it will improve, it will increase manufacturing, it will increase the service sector, it will create jobs. I think one single sector, garmenting, can create millions of jobs. Second area is value-added economies, and I believe food as a processing industry can also create multiple jobs where women can be employed. So I think in the next 5-10 years, if we work consciously, women can be a significant portion of our workforce.
So I think with that, we'll bring this panel to a close.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.